Alan Watts, Cultivating Life's Rhythmic Harmony. Part 1. The Symphony of Existence. What if life is not a journey to a destination, but a dance meant to be enjoyed step by step? What if the meaning isn't in the end, but in the rhythm of the unfolding moment? Alan Watts, philosopher and spiritual entertainer, believed this deeply, that the entire point of existence was not to arrive somewhere, but to play, to sway, to harmonize with the cosmic beat. He challenged the Western obsession with achievement, outcome, and finality, inviting us instead to listen to the music of the present. He said, "Life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be had." And in a world where every ping of a phone, every calendar reminder, every pressure to optimize and upgrade pulls us further from ourselves, this message matters more than ever in 2025. We are out of sync not just with the world, but with the inner music of our own being. We've traded rhythm for rush, flow for force, presence for performance. And yet, under the chaos, something quieter still hums. A current. A pulse. The Taoists called it the way. Watts called it the dance. He saw that existence is not a machine to be engineered, but a symphony we're invited to join. This idea, that reality is music and we are the melody, radically shifts how we approach our lives. It softens the clenched fists of control. It relaxes the anxious mind that always wants to know what's next. It encourages us to stop grasping and start grooving. Watts pointed out how absurd it would be to go to a concert only waiting for the final note. No, we go to enjoy the entire piece. So why do we live our lives only striving for a conclusion? Why are we obsessed with destinations and dismissive of the unfolding journey?
The answer, Watts said, is that we have mistaken the map for the territory, the symbol for the real. We confuse money with wealth, grades with learning, titles with purpose. But in truth, fulfillment arises not from ticking boxes, but from engaging fully with the ever-changing flow of life. Cultivating rhythmic harmony is about returning to this engagement. It is a felt sense of being in sync with your breath, your surroundings, your relationships, the seasons, the silence. And when we lose this rhythm, as we often do in the busyness of modern life, we begin to feel disconnected, disoriented, disembodied. Watts observed that modern man suffers from a hallucination of being a separate ego, a mind trapped inside a bag of skin, separate from the rest of the universe. And this false separation creates the illusion that life is happening to us, not through us. To rediscover rhythm, then, is to come back into communion with the dance of all things. It is to realize you are not an observer of the universe, but a participant, an instrument in the cosmic orchestra. But how do we begin to hear this music again? It starts with slowing down, with listening, with honoring the pauses as much as the notes, with embracing silence as part of the song. When we truly pay attention, not just mentally, but somatically, we begin to feel the rhythm that was always there, in the breath, the wind, the heartbeat, the patterns of sunrise and sleep. Watts often drew from Eastern traditions to point out that reality is not composed of isolated bits, but of waves, processes, flows. In Zen, the present moment is not a place between past and future, it is everything. And to be in rhythm with life is to be in the now, not as a clock tick but as a living, breathing field of awareness. This is not about abandoning goals or responsibilities. Rather, it's about bringing presence into them. You can type an email in rhythm. You can parent in rhythm. You can walk down a crowded street and still be in sync. The difference is in whether you are resisting the flow or moving with it. Resistance feels like tension, like tightness in the chest, like racing ahead of the moment. Flow feels like receptivity, ease, spaciousness. And the more we cultivate this quality of awareness, the more life begins to feel like something we're dancing with, not something we're dragging behind us or running ahead of. Watts emphasized play not as frivolous entertainment, but as the essence of living well. The universe, he said, is fundamentally playful. It does not serve a purpose the way a tool does. It expresses, unfolds, emerges. And when we see our own lives as expressions, not duties, not burdens, we begin to rediscover joy. This shift isn't passive, it's participatory. It means actively showing up with presence, curiosity, and gratitude. It means noticing the moments when we're out of sync, anxious, over-controlling, burned out, and gently returning to center, to breath, to now. In the relentless forward motion of 2025, with AI accelerating, the climate shifting, and social expectations multiplying, cultivating a rhythmic life is a radical act of reclaiming your humanness. It is the path not of escape, but of deeper participation. And it begins right where you are, not in some distant ideal, but in the very texture of this moment. Listen to it. Feel it. Move with it. Because the secret, as Alan Watts reminds us, is not in finding the meaning of life, but in feeling its music. And the song is already playing. Are you ready to dance? Alan Watts, Cultivating Life's Rhythmic Harmony. Part 2. Beyond the Illusion of Separation. Alan Watts famously described the human ego as a hallucination, a skin-encapsulated ego that sees itself as isolated from the rest of the universe. According to Watts, this illusion of separateness is the root of much of our modern suffering. We live under the impression that we are lonely islands in a sea of otherness, cut off from nature, each other, and even our own deeper selves. This fragmentation breeds anxiety, fear, and an insatiable need to control, to dominate, to protect a self that feels constantly under threat. But what if this egoic shell is just a trick of perspective? What if we are not separate at all, but rather strands in an infinite web, threads in a vast, living tapestry of interconnectedness? Watts urged us to question the boundaries we take for granted. Where does your skin end and the air begin? Where do your thoughts come from? Are they truly yours, or echoes of a larger field of consciousness? These questions weren't meant to confuse, but to awaken. Because once you see through the illusion, life transforms. The world no longer appears as a battlefield of competing selves, but as a cooperative dance of mutual becoming. You realize that the breath you inhale was exhaled by trees. That the food you eat comes from soil, sun, and rain. That your heartbeat echoes ancient rhythms formed long before you had a name. In short, you begin to see that you are the universe, expressing itself as a human being for a little while. This shift in perspective, from separation to participation, is not just philosophical, it's practical. When you truly understand your connectedness, your relationships deepen. Compassion flows more easily. The need to judge, to compare, to defend your ego begins to soften. Instead of seeing others as them, you start to recognize us. Instead of striving to stand apart, you learn the joy of standing together. Ecology gives us a vivid mirror for this truth. Every natural system thrives through interdependence. Forests communicate underground via fungal networks. Oceans are balanced by complex interplays of currents, life forms, and cycles. Nothing in nature survives alone. And neither do we. Social networks, economies, even emotions are part of dynamic feedback systems. One smile can ripple outward through dozens of people. One act of kindness can change a life. We are constantly affecting and being affected, whether we realize it or not. Watts challenged the mechanistic worldview that sees individuals as isolated cogs in a machine. He proposed a more organic metaphor, that of a growing plant. A flower is not separate from the garden, it is the garden, expressing itself uniquely in that bloom. In the same way, you are not just in the universe, you are an expression of it. This truth liberates us from the crushing weight of hyper-individualism. You don't have to invent your identity from scratch. You don't have to carry the world alone. You are supported by a network of being that extends through time, space, culture, and consciousness. But this isn't a call to passivity. Recognizing your connectedness doesn't mean becoming a passive drop in the ocean. It means realizing that you are the ocean, in motion. That your choices matter. That how you show up in the world ripples outward in ways you can't fully grasp. What's encouraged us to shift our attention from the contents of life to the context. From what we have, to what we are part of. When you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or lost, reconnect with this bigger picture. Step outside. Touch a tree. Look at the sky. Breathe in the air and remember, you are not alone. The same forces that move the stars also move through you. The illusion of separation will always try to reassert itself, especially in a world filled with screens, borders, labels, and algorithms designed to divide. But you can return again and again to the truth of connection. This return is a practice, a daily remembrance, a quiet tuning in. Meditation, journaling, mindful breathing, these are not escapes from reality, but doorways into a deeper one. The more you cultivate this awareness, the more natural it becomes to live in harmony with others, with nature, and with yourself. You begin to notice synchronicities. You begin to feel more at home in your body, your relationships, your place in the world. The anxiety of being out of place begins to dissolve. Because the truth is, you are never out of place. You are life, doing what life does, changing, growing, unfolding. There is no edge to you. No fixed boundary. You are a process, not a product. A wave, not a rock. A verb, not a noun. And this is freeing. Because if you are not a separate self that must constantly assert and defend its identity, then you can relax. You can participate. You can play. And in that play, you rediscover the rhythm of life not as something to achieve, but as something to remember. Alan Watts taught that when we stop clinging to the illusion of separateness, we begin to hear the music again. And in that music, we remember who we truly are. Not fragments. Not strangers. But notes in a single, infinite song. Alan Watts, Cultivating Life's Rhythmic Harmony. Part 3. Flowing with Change and Harmonizing Within. In a world marked by perpetual transformation, Alan Watts invites us to stop resisting the tides of life and instead learn to surf them. He reminds us that impermanence isn't something to fear, but the very essence of existence. Everything flows, relationships shift, careers evolve, identities transform, and even the structures we build around us dissolve with time. Our mistake, Watts argues, lies in treating life as static, as something to be controlled or held in place. But life, by its very nature, is movement. The secret isn't to anchor yourself against the storm, but to become the storm, to flow with it, to dance within it, to laugh even as it howls. Resisting change only breeds suffering because it denies the truth of how things are. Watts teaches that clinging to permanence is like trying to grasp water. It slips through your fingers, no matter how tightly you hold on. Instead, he offers a different metaphor. Be like water. Adaptable, resilient, unshaken. In doing so, we not only survive change, we become its partner. Consider the changes we all face in 2025, evolving technology, social upheaval, personal reinvention. We are in a global flux, where uncertainty feels like the only constant. Yet, rather than being paralyzed by the unknown, Watts encourages us to engage it with curiosity, with playfulness. This is not a call to abandon responsibility or passively accept whatever happens. It is a reminder that peace does not come from control, it comes from participation. We can meet each moment as it arises, not with fear, but with fluidity. This is the art of harmonizing within, accepting what we cannot change, acting with presence on what we can, and knowing the difference through deep inner stillness. Watts also reminds us of life's beautiful paradoxes, how joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death are all intertwined. To reject one half of this dance is to miss the whole. He often spoke with humor about the human tendency to treat problems as enemies, when in fact, they are part of the larger rhythm. By laughing at life's contradictions, we become less rigid and more resilient. Playfulness, for Watts, is not naivety, it is wisdom in motion. It allows us to hold our beliefs lightly, to explore rather than defend, to adapt rather than resist. Imagine approaching your challenges as you would a game, not trivializing them, but engaging them with flexibility and presence. In doing so, you transform resistance into responsiveness. You become an artist of experience, shaping your life with spontaneity and grace. Watts also emphasized the importance of inner harmony, not in achieving some fixed state of perfection, but in tuning into the subtle rhythms of your own being. Just as an orchestra requires regular tuning, so too do our minds and bodies. Practices like mindfulness, meditation, and self-reflection become tools for staying in tune with ourselves, especially when the world outside is in dissonance. You begin to notice when you're forcing outcomes, when your thoughts are spiraling, when your actions are out of sync with your heart. And in those moments, rather than judging yourself, you pause, you breathe, you return. Inner harmony is not about always being calm, it's about being attuned. It's the ability to hear when your internal music has gone off-key and to gently retune without shame. Watts would say, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." That's the gift of impermanence, the freedom to evolve. Harmonizing within means embracing that freedom. Letting go of the old stories, outdated expectations, and self-imposed limitations. It means welcoming your own becoming with open arms, even when it's messy or unfamiliar. It also means aligning your inner world with the natural world, learning from the cycles of the moon, the tides, the changing seasons. These are not just poetic metaphors, they are blueprints for living. Nature doesn't rush, yet everything is accomplished. And so it is with us, when we listen, when we trust, when we flow. Alan Watts' wisdom is more than philosophical insight, it's an embodied practice. One that invites you to move through the world with curiosity instead of caution, to meet change as a dance partner, not a threat, and to live as though the universe were a symphony, and you were one of its essential notes. The rhythm is already playing. The harmony is already there. All that remains is to listen inward, to release the need for control, and to let life move through you with its natural, boundless grace. Because ultimately, as Watts taught, the point is not to become something, but to realize what you already are, life itself, in motion, in rhythm, in harmony.